I think it's time we take a look over the groups and have a look at what happened yesterday, in case any of you guys missed it. Let's first glance at Group A and see where these players stand. Excoundrel, talk me through what happened yesterday. How did we get to here?
So the first game of the day, we saw Fnatic Academy go up against Euronics. Actually, we talked a lot about draft, and we all felt that Fnatic Academy had a pretty solid draft in that first game. They got those 3 power picks. It seems to be a very prominent feature of 624 drafts. If you can land those power picks, go towards, what we would call a conventional 624 composition, and Fnatic Academy came out swinging in that first game. LDLC, they really came out as well. They performed excellently. I think they played up against Asus ROG armies, so they were impressive too. And obviously we saw Nerve. Now, maybe they, forgive the pun, had some nerves on this first day of the Challenger Series qualifiers because they came up against Babaski, and as Sona and you saw, they really struggled in the early game.
No, they did. I think Babaski kind of showed up a lot in that game unexpectedly as well. They haven't been the team in this group that people have been touting as one of those top 2, but their early game yesterday was strong. They need to work on that mid game, and I hope they've gone back today and said, look, we need to work on our strategy as we get towards taking this mid tower and pushing for those objectives, because if they do, they could quite easily challenge to be one of those top 3 or top 2 teams.
Okay, let's take a look at Group B as well and see how that one panned out. Sona, we'll start with you this time. Talk us through a little bit on this one.
So I think if you just look at this scoreboard, the real question is whether Larssen can maintain that high-flying form. They a little bit of a ragtag composition. They've got some good players there, but they are not as synergistic a team as some of the other teams there. Kinguin, of course, have yet to actually play a match, winning through forfeit yesterday. So their position up near the top of that standing is a bit questionable as well. They're a strong team. I think at the end of the week, we're going to see Forge near the top there, probably in the first position, and then there's 3 or 4 teams there fighting out for second place.
I think everybody expected Kinguin and Forge to be at the top. There was the people basically expecting them to be the ones to qualify. The real surprise is Larssen, obviously. They had an excellent game, really played it almost solo queue type composition, worked out very well, kept those ganks going, kept the engagers going, and we'll see if they can perform against Forge, who they'll be playing later on.
Absolutely. Well, it's about time to jump into our first game. Picks and bans are already underway, so let's jump into the first one, and I'll introduce it as we jump into the draft. It's going to be Fnatic Academy up against LDLC. Now, Fnatic Academy and LDLC both managed to win their first games here in the Challenger Series qualifier. So we'll see which one of them is going to be able to keep the ball rolling. Who's going to be able to go 2-0 by the end of today? Already, the bans rolling in. Rengar and Syndra, unsurprisingly, getting banned out. 2 of the huge picks from yesterday.
But surprisingly, Swain.
Yeah.
Swain has bbeen banned here by Fnatic. Now, Camille obviously coming through, we all expected. But, I mean, Sona, we saw Swain come through for Fearless yesterday. He played that, and it seemed like it was a top lane pick designed to counter some of the classic tanks that we see up in that top lane. It just didn't seem to work out for him.
Yeah, I think part of that was just the matchup that he was in generally. That the macro play by his team didn't quite suit playing that Swain just purely into a tank island in the top lane. Banning it out against tanks does make a lot of sense, and I'm actually a bit surprised by Fnatic Academy banning out the Camille as well, because that's always a first pick opportunity for you. So banning that on blue side, to me, seems a little bit over-eager by Fnatic. They could have left it open and made LDLC ban it out.
Yeah, but you can see here with the strategy that they've employed that they always have this sort of premise that they want to go for that first pick for Broxah, and that first pick for Broxah, even when I've seen Broxah not play on Fnatic Academy, he's kind of managed to dictate the strategy so that he would always get his hands on Lee Sin, because we talked about it yesterday. Broxah is a excellent Lee Sin player. And
even outside of Broxah specifically as well, I think that kind of Rek'Sai versus Lee Sin was a big topic of conversation in general when it comes to the first pick, but we've already got Poppy and Karma locked in as well. I can't say I'm surprised at all by this second rotation of the draft here.
I really like this from LDLC. This is what Euronics failed to do against Fnatic yesterday. A lot of draft in 624 is power picks. How many power picks can you get on specific rotations? And 2 power picks immediately locked in for LDLC here. Poppy, considered one of the best tanks in the top lane right now, probably a small tier above the Maokai and Nautilus, even though they can go toe-to-toe. And Karma, undoubtedly considered one of the best supports at this current time, so they've managed to lock those in.
I definitely agree. I think the Karma was kind of obvious because of the Thresh ban. It shows that they really want to pick up that Karma. Thresh, especially Cly, who is known for his Thresh, is pretty good into that Karma. Now they've decided to go for this top lane tank and their mid laner as well. I think Nautilus works okay into the Poppy. The Ryze is just a strong mid laner at the moment, especially on someone who is such a good player like Niski. I think now LDLC have a little bit of a dance to play around to work out exactly how they're going to round out this draft.
Yeah, interestingly as well, going for that Ryze, because yesterday we didn't really see anyone have any major success on the Rise. We saw it picked up a few times during the drafts, but we never really saw it shine through. So I'm intrigued to see if today Nisqy can be the one to really bring out the power behind Rise, because Nisqy had a phenomenal performance himself mechanically yesterday. Yeah,
and Rise is an incredibly powerful champion, obviously. Yeah. As the game progresses, he gets more and more frightening. That's kind of what Rise has always done. Riot have never really changed the thematic that Rise is supposed to get more powerful as the game progresses. However, this matchup for Rise can be fairly difficult. They've locked in the Cassiopeia here on the mid lane for Ica. He will get shoved in early. Now, it will eventually balance out. Rise should be able to shove as efficiently as Cassiopeia will, and it's not as bad as the Syndra matchup for Rise. Post 6, you're not going to get flattened by the ultimate. It's all about where these two fit into the composition, because as this gets out of the laning phase, you could almost argue that they each have individual roles. Cassiopeia, however, with the nerf to Rylai's, she's lost a lot of her usual build path that made her so utility focused in a team fight, and so control heavy, her ability to disengage, re-engage, and chase people down. So I'm interested to see how effective they're now going to go toe-to-toe on 624.
And speaking about that Rylai's change, look at the rest of the composition. You have got the Jhin there with the Curtain Call, you've got the Karma as well with the Chase. Poppy probably can build an Iceborne Gauntlet in this game and get that further chase down. So the rest of her team does actually facilitate her in that utility chase position. We've got the Zyra and the Caitlyn lock in here as the bot lane for Fnatic Academy. It's a bot lane we saw a lot at Worlds.
And this is something I was talking to you about earlier today, Sona, was are we going to see Zyra? We've seen a lot of kind of ranged AP supports, obviously Nami as well. Zyra definitely fits into that category. We saw in the NA Challenger qualifiers as well, Zyra was picked up alongside Caitlyn. We've got that very same composition here in the bottom lane for Fnatic Academy, and that's going to round out their composition.
So the jungle's been left to last here for LDLC. The obvious choice is likely Rek'Sai if you're looking at the straight up tier list right now. Rek'Sai fits in. Olaf has been hovered here.
I prefer Olaf. So the reason I prefer Olaf is because it allows you to get onto the Caitlyn. Rek'Sai can't quite get there in time.
And it's very good against Zyra.
Especially if a big Stranglethorns comes out, you are just able to get onto that backline a little bit easier.
So what Olaf does here, and it's one of the other sort of champions that has still remained strong in the jungle, it is very good against that level of CC that is being brought by Fnatic. So obviously you can get through the Zyra, obviously you can ignore Nautilus for the most part. It synergizes very well with the Jhin ultimate. Everyone is used to seeing level 6 bottom Jhin just open that ultimate, and then Olaf runs in, tries to get some kills on a tower dive or whatever, and then you always have Karma to back him up. The issue is that a lot of people sometimes pick Zyra into Olaf, because if you're trying to engage, the Zyra Stranglethorns actually separates Olaf from his team. You can't follow the Olaf through the Stranglethorns. So sometimes it can actually play against the Olaf. Now, while you're good against the Zyra, sometimes Zyra can actually do havoc, in terms of the way you want to run your team fight.
It's something we saw a lot when Nunu was in meta as well. You'd play Nunu Zyra into it, and you'd have these two big AoE zone controls. If the team you were playing against who had the Olaf weren't that coordinated, they would always, have the Olaf run past, he'd get caught out, and then you could engage the 5v4. LDLC yesterday didn't show any of that miscommunication, so I'm not too worried about that overdive from the Olaf. I think they'll be sensible enough to wait out the team fight and then engage when they have the opportunity.
It's very easy to say, if Olaf runs in and suddenly Stranglethorns come down, the team says, look, we can't follow, he can just run out. I mean, it is perfectly viable, but it does do what it's supposed to do. It's a disengage tool. It stops it happening.
And it goes back to that point exactly of communication. You've got to have that level there. You've all got to be on the same page so that when your Olaf runs in, you can scream at him and say, no, this is a terrible, terrible idea. Let's back away. But we've now seen the full compositions locked in. Where do you guys think we're going to go with this one? Who are going to be the big carries looking at what we've got down in the draft?
I mean, the immediate person that springs to mind for Fnatic Academy is Broxah. He had huge impact on the Lee Sin early in last game. It's a champion that he is so well known for. I'd expect him to be looking to impact early on here. We saw that the difference in terms of what Lee Sin can do versus a low impact jungler. Now, Olaf isn't totally low impact, but he's not exactly got the most, reliable ganks in the world, we could say. He has to rely on getting good positioning in lane to get a good undertow and continue that undertow, and usually it works well with a lane with high CC. Whereas obviously Lee Sin coming through, he can have an early impact in the game. His damage is pretty insane early on as well. And we've seen Broxah really focus that mid lane as well. So maybe look at Broxah and Nisqy to potentially link up here.
I think bot lane's going to be a real point of contestation for both these two teams. Caitlyn Zyra is a relatively safe lane. Mr. Ryler's not really known for his Caitlyn play. He played a good Jhin yesterday, and of course Lucian is one of his main champions as well. But Crownie is known for his Jhin play, and Moops is known for his Karma play as well. So I think if they can get an early push into that lane, perhaps they will be able to catch out that Zyra a couple of times. That's the real weakness of Zyra support, is how squishy you are. If you get caught out, you're just going to die. And we see a lot of Zyras who go behind, falling 0-5, 0-6 quite easily in a game, just because how often you can catch that Zyra out.
It's funny you say known for your Karma play. If any support isn't known for their Karma play
true.
right
Everyone
now,
is known for Karma.
if you can't play Karma as support right now, you're not a support. But I think I agree. Bot lane could be real big here.
I think one of the big things to be watching out for this game, and I want you guys at home to be watching out for this, is Frayed in the top lane. He's got his Poppy again. Last game, LDLC went, or Frayed specifically, went 6-0-6 on Poppy. That is a huge scoreline. This time, he's going to be up against a Nautilus and a Lee Sin. Now, Naut can happily lock someone down, and we know that Broxer is an aggressive jungler. We know he's going to be wanting to get some kills, and I wouldn't be surprised if that's the lane that they try and lock down to take this game.
Well, it's the same combination they played yesterday. Broxer and Kickers with the Nautilus and Lee Sin, I think, ended up 6-2-13 as a combined duo over the course of the game. So the Poppy yesterday was played into Yoppa's Fiora. Fiora was going very aggressive a lot of the time. That's one of the reasons that we got a lot of the kills in that top lane for the Poppy. She was 5-0 at one point. I don't see Fnatic Academy giving her that much leeway. I don't see her being able to get that far ahead.
The matchup is actually interesting. Poppy could get pushed in early on. Nautilus does push a majority of his tank lane matchups in fairly early.
Yep.
But as the lane evens out, it's going to be like we expect to see in some tank matchups, a bit of a wet noodle fight. I mean, not much will happen. And obviously, you know that Poppy has that safeguard against Lee Sin in the Steadfast Presence. You can stop those ganks in his tracks sometimes.
We'll have to see. Well, it's about that time once again, gentlemen. I'm going to ask you for your predictions. Sona, we'll start with you. Who's going to take this, Fnatic Academy or LDLC?
I don't think I can look past Fnatic Academy. They were dominant yesterday, and they've got a lot of their power picks once again. I have to go for Fnatic.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go for Fnatic Academy. I much prefer the draft. You always have that safeguard of Rise in the later game. Brox are known for more early pressure. They can try and get things swinging early in the early game. Yeah, I'm going to go for Fnatic Academy.
I want to go for LDLC just so there's a bit of diversity on the desk, but I've got to go for Fnatic Academy as well. I think they looked incredibly strong yesterday. Not to take away from LDLC's victory, but I just think Fnatic looked superior, simply put. So
and you are a Fnatic fanboy as well.
I am a bit of a Fnatic fanboy as well, but those are the predictions. We're going to be taking score of them throughout the week as well, so at the end of the week, one of us will be the prediction king. Xscoundrel currently flawless in record right now. I think I'm on 3 and you're on 2.
Yeah, I think
correct?
I'm on 2, yeah.
So
Fnatic is
so trailing behind.
I thought I'd lost one.
Did you lose one?
Okay.
I don't know. I'd have to check.
We'll find out at the end.
Yeah.
We certainly will. Well,
mystery.
Actually, we've only got 4 points so far because I guess technically the last one didn't count. But either way, I believe we are just about ready to get into game. Final thoughts on the matchup, boys. What are we thinking here? What are the play styles going to be like? Who's going to be on the accelerator pedal?
Oh, well, I think if you've got a Lee Sin in game, you're going to be on the accelerator pedal. And speaking of being in game, we are in now.
We certainly are. It's going to be myself and Xscoundrel taking you through the action on this one. As we head on to Summoner's Rift for the very first game of Day 2 here at the EU Challenger Scene Qualifiers. And what a matchup this should be. LDLC up against Fnatic, both of them winning their games on Day 1. But can they turn that into a 2-0 streak? All to play for here, and obviously as well, playing for that spot in the Challenger Series. This is playing for competitive life, basically, here in Europe. So,
LDLC really impressed me yesterday. They really did. I think they looked very strong. Admittedly, their opposition may not have been as high caliber as what Fnatic had to face up against with Euronics, but I still think LDLC looked good. Specifically, Moops and Crownie, I think they had an excellent game. And I think Sona was right to highlight them as a potential lane for LDLC.
I think it's one of these situations that we sometimes see in Worlds as well, where you kind of have, as Twitter was saying, a group of death, where Group A has a lot of very strong teams, and it could be one of those situations where perhaps if LDLC had been in Group B, they might have had an easier time of it. But so far, they're certainly holding their own. And I think this game is going to be very, very important for LDLC if they want to be in that top
Another
2.
interesting small storyline here is Iniski, I believe, used to play for LDLC. I believe he used to play in the mid lane, and then he went to Fnatic Academy. So it's another one of those sort of... We've seen it a couple of times that I think... players switching between teams in the Challenge Series qualification, and they've got to play up against their former squad. I got to say, Ica though has been impressive in the mid lane as well. Solid replacement there for Niski. The matchup, like we said, between Rise and Cassiopeia is interesting. If Cassiopeia at any point misses a Q, then Rise has an opportunity to get a favourable trade. However, if you're continuing to pressure with your Q, then actually Ica shouldn't feel particularly pressured in the lane.
Arrow not having a fun time of it in the jungle there, starting off with his blue game quite low. Obviously, no leash from his team on that one, but should be A-okay. Obviously, these guys know what they're doing, so they should be able to get away with taking the Gromp on this one.
I'd hope so, Munchables, I'd hope so. You can see here, Ica, you land a Q, you can start to get those Twin Fangs down, and it means just it's very difficult for Niski to trade effectively. He's getting pushed in as well. It's what you expect in the early matchup between these two. We didn't really talk too much about the compositions here. We've really got to focus on what they're aiming to do. You look at LDLC's composition. We've seen this iterations over the last few months. The Jhin and Olaf, you combine it with that frontline tank of the Poppy as well. You have that engage tool. You have that front line that can very easily negotiate its way around multitudes of CC. And then you always have Ica in that backline to follow up with that consistent damage in a team fight. And obviously what Cassiopeia also provides, along with an extent to Karma and Poppy, is some sort of disengage and potential to chase back down once it's more favorable for you on the counter engage. So they've got a good siege, and then obviously that excellent team fight composition coming through as well.
Absolutely. Well, the biggest matchup I want to talk about right now, especially in this kind of pre-6 section of the game, is the jungle matchup, because we mentioned it in Champion Select. Olaf struggles sometimes to get these early ganks pre-6 before you've got that Ragnarok, unless your laner is able to help you out in terms of CC, in terms of lockdown when you enter the lane. Broxah on Lee Sin, however, completely different story. Lee Sin is more than happy to gank basically beyond level 2. So do you expect Broxah to be being very aggressive in the lanes, or do you think he'll just try and outfarm the
I think outfarming the Omo is probably a poor decision, just because although you probably can keep up at the start, Olaf will eventually start to become a little bit like Rek'Sai, farms up, moderately easily, gets, high CS numbers with ease. And realistically, playing to Lee Sin's strength is, some people will farm to 6, become that sort of kick bot where you isolate a target, but Lee Sin can have an impact earlier on in the laning phase. However, you're going up against some fairly hard lanes to gank. When you've got a Karma, it is pretty difficult to get things locked down unless you're getting a lot of help from the Zyra in lane. And Ica, probably the most vulnerable target, still can increase the movement speed by landing these Qs. So a lot of it may stick out as a fairly difficult set of lanes to gank. Although I'd imagine with the Rise being there in the mid lane with the Cassiopeia, that would be where Broxah is looking to impact.
Yeah, I've got to say, looking at that bottom lane right now, when we've watched the trades over the last minute or so, Crowny's really been struggling in terms of trades with Mr. Ralph, which you would expect. It's a Caitlyn in the bottom lane alongside a Zyra. You expect to be taking a lot of damage. But I'm very impressed by Crowny's CS numbers right now, not struggling at all when it comes to getting those last hits. Has now used his health potion, so maybe that'll change in the next few minutes. But it's going to be down to Mr. Rales and down to Clyde to really punish that situation.
Absolutely, and Clyde's been doing a really good job of getting that pressure down with the Zyra. It's kind of what you expect when you pick a Zyra in the bot lane. Specifically designed to be as annoying as possible, do as much damage as possible, lock up any singular target with those grasping roots, and then just allow your AD carry to then combo it with the trap from the Caitlyn and just hilt him a Peacemaker, get those headshots down as well. And you see Moops is, spending most of his time just trying to shield as much as possible, trying to negate as much damage as, some Karmas look to go aggressive. In this lane, the Karma very heavily focused on being defensive. But Broxah now looking for his first gank of the game, trying to take advantage of the fact that Ica's pushing.
Yeah, and Ica going to get locked up there. Might just have to use his flash on this one. Nice little wait there for Broxah.
Oh!
Don't quite get the kill. It's close. And now Nero for the counter gank. He's got a lot of damage. Let's remember, this isn't Olaf. He will stop at nothing. First blood comes through. Broxah has to flash away from this one. Nero throws the undertow but can't quite follow up. First blood, though, goes the way of LDLC.
That is what Olaf is very, very good at. It is those counter ganks. If he can get into a position where he's coming in on a lane that's overextended, when Lee Sin has been there, they forced Cassiopeia very far under her turret, and Olaf, well, saw his opportunity, came in, used the undertows, and that's what Olaf can do. He's a king of counter ganking and finding good positions. That's what we expect from an Olaf jungle. However, Broxah unable to capitalize. I really like the way that Ica held on to the flash until the very last moment, until they knew that she could get into a position where she's, far enough behind turret.
Yeah, and I've got to say, that kill onto Nero is going to be fairly critical in this situation. It means he's got a slight gold lead, but when you look at the CS numbers, that gold lead could be very important. He could have started to fall behind Broxah, which, as we were talking about earlier, is a little bit surprising when it comes to farming between a Lee Sin and an Olaf. But here we go.
Lee Sin's pretty competent at farming, but he's... Olaf has been spending a lot of time trying to impact and do some counter jungling as well. Here comes Nero, though. Yeah,
Nero looking to just make something happen 1v2 right now. Rylez is in trouble. Level 6 has already been achieved. Rylez goes down. There's a second kill of the game. Crownie picks this one up, but Broxah's on the scene. It's going to be traded, though. 2 for 1 all in all. LDLC, they can't quite find Clyde, but they're happy with a 2 for 1.
LDLC looking very solid in this early portion of the game. Kind of the area of the game that I was expecting Fnatic to try and at least start to accelerate in. You do have the backup of the late game for Fnatic. Caitlyn, Ryze, and Nautilus all fantastic in that situation. Ico without flash, though, does have cleanse.
Yeah, here comes the depth charge. Nice little stun comes onto Kikis, but I don't think that's going to be enough. A cleanse came through as well there, but I don't think that actually blocked anything in the end. Kikis and his mid laner, Niski, are going to be able to realm walk on out of there. Ico goes down. Fnatic answering for some of the pressure that LDLC have been layering down in this early game.
This is something that we praised Kikis for yesterday. He has got great map awareness. He looks to make those plays across the map when he can. He came into that mid lane numerous times looking to impact and put pressure onto the turret. Niski's going to get charged, doesn't get stunned.
No, he's going to be A-okay on this one. Gets a nice little bit of counter damage down onto Nero as well. Just as a little bit of a silver lining to that situation. And didn't have to use any summoner spells. I mean, he didn't have any available, I don't think, at the time. Maybe he had Ghost, but it's going to be A-okay. I think had that been Ica in lane instead of Frayed, maybe he would have been in a lot more trouble.
Absolutely. Just going to see Nero take his second rotation here. Red buff going to fall. Got to say, been impressed with him so far, but Broxah has had an impact too, so
yep.
Can't count him out.
Yeah, I mentioned how this was going to be a game of which jungler was going to be able to get ahead pre-6, how it's going to be a lot about this early pressure. So far, these junglers are matching up fairly head-to-head.
Absolutely. It's just that small CS advantage that's running in favor of Broxah. I think he spent a little bit more time farming than you'd maybe expect Lee Sin to do, but he has now got level 6. Now you start to see him potentially do something fancy. Speaking of fancy, Curtain Call comes through.
The Curtain Call will land onto Mr. Rylez. Clyde going to soak up the last one, but only 200 HP remaining. They walk away, though, from this situation. That's going to be the ultimate burn from Crownie, which is a huge engage tool for the side of LDLC. But they'll be fine to just head on back to base. Brox is going to be around to make sure no dragon can be capitalized off of this recall.
Absolutely, Brox is going to get the River Scuttler, though. Keep vision control there. And speaking of vision control, it's something that we haven't touched too heavily on over the last day. But Fnatic Academy, very impressed with their ability to control River, especially. Both top and bottom side River seems to be lit up with blue wards. So really heavily focusing on, obviously, the Tracker's Knife, the almost go-to jungle item for most junglers, making sure you keep control of vision. And a little bit of deep vision starting to creep in, trying to push that ward line up a little bit.
Yeah. And I think the most important thing about the Tracker's Knife as well is it allows you to go for that sweeper trinket. It allows you to not only create your own vision, but also deny your opponents, which is so crucial when it comes to this early dragon control. Niski, Broxah, and Clyde all pushing up very aggressively here, setting up around the enemy blue buff.
I think they're spelling out that they know that a dive is probably on the cards here. Whether that just puts enough pressure on to force them back. LDLC, they're going in.
Crownie's going to be in trouble on this one. Niski jumps on forward, locks up Crownie, but has to back away just a little bit. Clyde going to be using those Strangle Thorns, and there's a Dragon Rage to finish off a kill. 2 now going the way of Fnatic, and Moops is in trouble as well. Flashes on back, but Ica's locked on down. Niski just dishing out the damage, and there's a double kill for the Rise. 3 kills go the way in favor of Fnatic. It's just 1 for LDLC. They'll get a tower on top of everything else.
The Fnatic playbook opened up at the same page as yesterday. That is exactly what we saw from them. They go for that tier 1 pressure, and actually LDLC knew it was coming. They tried to prepare, but Fnatic executed it so perfectly. Again, Clyde separating everybody with that Strangle Thorns, allowing Niski the time to do damage, do the work on Ryze. I mean, you've hit that spike of the tier. He actually went for the cooldown boost before going towards that. I guess it's going to be a Catalyst of Aeons for him. I'll have to see where he runs with the Mana Crystal there. But again, the tier is sometimes all you need to start stacking up the damage on Ryze, and you saw it there. He looked destructive.
Yeah, he absolutely did. And Got to go back to champion select at this point. One of the big things that we mentioned was that Broxah got the first pick, Lee Sin, and he has been doing wonders on it so far. The amount of pressure he's been layering out, and his Dragon Rage in that fight started off the snowball. He was the first one to get that kill.
So you don't necessarily need to have all this early impact as Lee Sin. I know I harped on about it so much in the start of the game where we were saying, well, Broxah needs to impact early game, blah, blah, blah. You don't necessarily need to because, Lee Sin still has a role as the game progresses. His damage is still going to be good right now, but even as we get towards the later game where classically Lee Sin is supposed to fall off, he does always have that ability with that high mobility kit in the Safeguard and the Dragon Rage kick to isolate key targets, and that can be very useful against the likes of Cassiopeia, who generally in most cases is fairly low mobility, and obviously Crownie, if you can isolate him as well. I mean, there's loads of ways that Broxah can continue to impact, and obviously saw how good he was in that tower dive situation there as well. Moop's going to get locked up. Yeah,
nice little denial there from Kikis, and a lot of damage coming on through. Moops does have to be careful, but will get the root in the end. I've got to say as well, we're getting to a point in the game where LDLC are going to have to be very, very careful because we've got some item spikes coming in for Fnatic Academy. Sunfire Cape just finished for Kikis in the top lane. Rod of Ages is about to be done as well for Niski. And then when you look towards the bottom lane, not far away from an Infinity Edge on Mr. Rales. So 3 huge item spikes all about to collide at once.
Interesting, because I've classically, when I've built AD carry, I'd usually always go BF Sword, maybe build towards my Runan's Hurricane, but you can see here Mr. Rales just taking the Berserker's Greaves, so that's where his attack speed's going to come from, and now he's actually working down a little bit more AD. He's picked up the pickaxe as well. He might even end up finishing the Infinity Edge before he even considers an attack speed item, which is an interesting way of going about it, and I quite like it actually, because it gives him that more flat damage on the Piltover Peacemaker, and Piltover Peacemaker generally more impactful in the early game as well. So,
and I think one of the major things as well is just getting that AD to take down towers. As you can see, Fnatic Academy take a tower in the mid lane. They've already got bottom lane tier 1, and you just saw a blue ping up in that top lane. That is going to be the next pit stop. Rod of Ages now picked up for Niski. They're grabbing hold of those power spikes, and they look to use them effectively.
Feels like deja vu for me, this game, because this is almost exactly the way that Fnatic played it macro-wise last time we saw them play yesterday. They took that bot lane in a dive, they then rotated as a team, looked to pressure that mid lane, now that Ryze has got the same pushing capability as the Cassiopeia, and they were able to take that as they rotated up from top downwards and then zoned them away from the turret. It is just Fnatic doing exactly what they did yesterday, and LDLC are not responding to it, and Fnatic are getting away with it. They're getting huge amounts of global objectives, extending their gold lead to roughly 3,000 now. Looking pretty good.
Certainly are. Nice positioning there from Nero. Walks in towards the blue buff, and it means that Mr. Rales cannot go and defend this tower until Clyde has arrived as well. We'll be able to get here. They obviously only suffer a little bit of damage to the tower, but each and every little bit helps, especially when you're on the back foot like LDLC.
Kikis going down a Sheen build path early on here. We kind of saw this from him yesterday. Just gives it a little bit of trading power. Obviously, this is still going to be a bit of a wet noodle fight, but, he may be able to push these waves in for the Poppy, which, relieves pressure on the bot lane. It means this duo can continue to go toe-to-toe with Crownie and Moops, and then it becomes that, target for the top lane tier 1 here. So, working out quite nicely.
Certainly has been, and I think quite importantly in that top lane matchup is the fact that we're nearly a full item ahead in favour of Kikis at this point. He's already got his Sunfire, and now he's going towards that Iceborne Gauntlet as well. On the other side, we've got multiple components of different items, but no finished item. And the Sunfire Cape, actually, when you're playing Poppy, is quite a significant boost to your wave clear. The Balmy Cinder does significantly less AoE damage.
Yeah, it does indeed, and you can see here, like Nautilus even needs any more wave clear. Actually, I think Kikis, did he get that?
Yeah, he managed to get it.
Yeah, he managed to get that.
Good job.
Not going to miss the blue steal. Kikis takes that one away as the Sheen.
We're on it with the objectives today.
Oh yeah!
Broxah managing to ward jump away over to the safety of the Rift Herald there, as we do have another tank fight going on in the bottom lane. But over towards the top side, the siege is kicking off. Rales and Cly trying to take down this final tier 1 tower. Broxah looking to be part of the situation as well. He's got wards available. Actually does smite away the Crux as well, so Broxah just trying to take just about everything that he can away from Nero.
It's my jungle now.
Yeah.
So he's saying Broxah is my jungle now. Anyway, looks like Niski trying to get into a position to help the siege, but doesn't look like they need much help, because with the Caitlyn and the Zyra's so good in a siege situation. Those plants have insane zoning potential. Obviously, they also soak up a bit of damage as well, so great siege potential with the Caitlyn Zyra, one of the best siege bot lanes you could probably pick up in the game, and they do, almost by themselves, and the pressure that Broxah was exhibiting in that topside red jungle, take away that tier 1 with little to no trouble. And now every tier 1 has disappeared here for LDLC, and what that means is Fnatic can now push in with their vision. They already have, as you can see in the red side jungle, but they can start to move that vision line up. They can start to look to make picks with Nautilus where possible, make picks with Ryze. You know, that ultimate can be used as a great flanking tool, and this is probably good for Fnatic. Well, not probably, is good for Fnatic, you know, when looking to pressure on those tier 2s and also maybe secure global objectives like the Dragon.
So now this is the point in the game that we were talking about yesterday, when it was the Babaski matchup. They got to this point, they were pretty significantly ahead of their opponents in a similar scenario to where Fnatic are right now. They didn't find a way to push that into a victory. Now this is the question for Fnatic Academy. Are they at the tier of a challenge team? Can they then turn this lead into a victory? Can they find more objectives off the back of this?
Well, actually, the interesting thing is, the great thing for Fnatic Academy is that their composition is only going to scale as the game progresses anyway. You've got a Caitlyn, a Ryze, both of which are incredible. Zyra essentially acts as a second AP carry for the team. As the game progresses, she usually ends up having the most damage done. I'm sure everybody's been in a solo queue game where support Zyra has ended up having the highest damage dealt to champions as the game has gone on. So they've actually got a composition that scales very, very nicely anyway. So if they can capitalize on this lead, great. Because, you know, they want to put the pressure down. They want to, you know, give no quarter to LDLC. But if they end up getting taken to 40 minutes here, they're not going to be too worried about the outcome of that. The only thing they potentially have to worry about is, you know, getting caught out potentially by an ultimate from Jhin and getting people picked off from time to time. But realistically, Fnatic are in a great position.
Yeah, and that's a second Ocean Drake as well, which in these likely siege scenarios that could be coming up, that extra bit of regen, while a lot of people kind of sniff at Ocean Drake a little bit, that regen with this specific composition could be pretty darn important in the upcoming minutes.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people say Ocean Drake's better for the laning phase, but it does have implications in siege areas. You know, if you can get it to start the regen on you again, you still have, you know, a large amount of mana being consumed by Ryze. Even though he's got the tier and stuff, he should be able to regenerate himself. So, you know, the regen could come in useful here. But, you know, admittedly, Ocean Drake in general tends to be better in the laning phase.
So now Fnatic starting to set up some deep vision. They've pretty much taken control of the LDLC jungle at this point. Blue buff is theirs, the red buff is theirs if they feel like going up towards that side of the map. But right now, they're looking for opportunities to catch people out. And it's going to be Crownie. He flashes away to safety, but Niski is not done it. Nice little snipe there on the overload. Grabs himself a kill, and now Nero has to Ragnarok defensively. Not a good situation when you're playing Olaf. You want to be aggressive.
Looks like Kikis isn't done yet, though. Ica.
He's not at all. And look at the damage coming out from Niski. That should finish off Ica, who actually manages to get away with things. Kikis is in trouble. This could be a turnaround. LDLC find one kill for themselves, but Nero gets shielded at the last second. We've got to say Moobs is doing a phenomenal job in this fight. Keeps 2 players alive and basically saves the day for LDLC.
But he saved the day in terms of potentially losing the team fight, but he hasn't saved the siege onto that tier 2. It should be Fnatic's. Looks like Freyed is doing a great job of trying to ward them off, but that's only going to require a couple more basic attacks, and that will end up falling. You can see there, even with the Jhin ultimate. Well, actually, Mr. Alaz. Oh,
Clyde didn't get abandoned by his team. They got out of range just at the last second there. Nice realm walk as well by Niski. Just pulls his team to safety, gets out of the curtain call, and now a 5,000 gold lead. 4 towers to 0, and 2 Ocean Drakes on top of all of that.
Do you know, I've always felt it's been a great skin for Ryze, by the way. I wanted to say it during the middle of the team fight, but I kind of had to hold myself back. Dodgeball Ryze. You know when he throws the overload? I feel like he'd be a dodgeball champion, and Niski there getting the max range dodgeball to the face. I think that's a pretty solid skin idea.
It's just like a Ben Stiller version of Ryze.
You can dodge a ball, but you can't dodge an overload.
Yeah, something like that anyway. Here we go. Niski going to grab his blue buff, and Vision going to be set up around Baron. They've got a couple of wards. LDLC. Now Fnatic going to be moving up towards that area. They're going to be looking to eradicate any vision that LDLC have and start to control that area for themselves.
Absolutely. They are doing a good job of getting some defensive vision in their red side jungle, though. You can see pink wards cropping up here and there. They know that there's kind of a last bastion of defense for them. They have that top lane tier 2 to defend. If they lose control of their red side jungle in terms of vision, there's no way that you can comfortably defend that tier 2, because the risk of a dive right now is very high from Fnatic. You know, you bring Kikis into the picture on this Nautilus, you bring Broxer and his ability to jump in, get those Dragon Rages. It is difficult to comfortably defend that tier 2 in the top lane without having vision in that red side jungle. But not only that, Baron is on the table now, and having red side jungle control for yourself means that you can comfortably try and contest Baron, or at least get into a position where you're trying to contest the vision there.
And I think, I mean, you mentioned Kikis there being a factor when it comes to tower dives. Even just at 2 items, he's already getting to the point in the game where Nautilus can look at just ignoring the tower entirely. He can kind of just walk under and take a fair few shots himself, and with Courage of the Colossus coming in on top of his normal shield, he can soak up so much damage. Frayed actually getting locked up a little bit, but Steadfast Presence will pull him away from danger. Curtain Call going to have to be used defensively here, but like I was saying before, Kikis is more than happy to soak up that damage and basically not even scratched.
Yeah, and Titan's Wrath, you can see, almost did, well, literally did 0 damage to him in terms of true health values, and that's a fairly big engage ultimate out of the table for LDLC. But let's be honest, I don't think engaging is the first thing on their minds right now. They are probably very happy to have just saved their tier 2 turret in that situation, but Fnatic certainly in control here. Now a 6k gold lead that they've managed to accrue at 22 minutes into the game. If they can continue this siege pressure that they've got a fantastic siege composition with the Caitlyn and the Zyra, and then they have that follow-up of the tower dive too. But it looks like that trap line's coming down. It looks like Baron is the call. Can LDLC respond to it?
This is going to be the question. Fnatic Academy, they've started off the Baron. There's no Rek'Sai in this game, so we should be safe, but it's going to be Nero charging in. He doesn't get the smite steal. It does go the way of Fnatic, but now can they finish things off? That exact scenario we talked about earlier with the Zyra ultimate goes down, but it means that it is an LDLC player dropping first. Ica goes down as well. Nero will follow very shortly, but Moops might just go down first. This is going to be a Wipers. Crown drops as well. Broxer with a triple kill. A Fnatic Academy, they get the Baron and a clean ace on top of it.
What a fantastic piece of work from Fnatic, securing the Baron and a clean ace off the back of it. Not many times you're going to be able to say that during this Challenger Series qualifications, I bet. Again, like we said, a lot of good work done by Clyde there, zoning the team away with the Stranglethorns. Olaf knowing that he couldn't commit because it was sure death now that the Baron was down as well. And that just allowed Kikis to then pick and choose who he wanted to engage. They end up taking one down. Then they lock down Ica, who, you know, Cassiopeia classically struggles against forms of hard CC. Well, Kikis was straight in there with a giant anchor to the face. And it was just a perfect cleanup and a nice flank at the end there by Niski, just to get Crownie down into the dirt as well.
Absolutely, and then a third Ocean Drake, just as a
what more could you ask for?
Cherry on the cake right there. And I mean, let's just take a second here, because these guys are going to be recalling now. We've got a small respite to talk about this game. How did we get to this stage? Because it felt very even towards the early game, and in fact, LDLC even took the lead to begin with.
Yeah, again, you know, we expected maybe to see some more pressure out of Brock. So definitely in the game that he played yesterday, we saw him be more impactful in terms of early game in the mid lane. But Fnatic didn't need to really, I guess, force the issue. They essentially played their game of, you know, macro-orientated structure taking. They took that bot lane tier 1, it very quickly snowballed into the tier 1 mid lane. It very quickly snowballed into tier 1 top lane. You know, they systematically find map position through vision. They set up these dives, they have fantastic siege, and they know it. And they, you know, they go in and they just make sure they use that siege to its full potential. And they've just managed to accrue this insane lead almost entirely through turret dives and sieges. All of this is mainly global objective gold and the result of, you know, LDLC desperately trying to defend their structures.
And once again, we have a scenario where Niski is the one with the highest kill participation out of the Fnatic Academy lineup. This guy is everywhere on the map. He was on Syndra yesterday, today he is on Ryze. And we mentioned it in Champion Select. Can Ryze step up? We've seen it picked a lot. We hadn't seen previous success. It looks like we might just see a Ryze win right now with how strong Fnatic are looking.
Once Syndra's off the table, Ryze actually doesn't have the worst set of matchups in the mid lane in the world. I mean, maybe against LeBlanc you could argue he might struggle, but, you know, against the other classics that we see in the mid lane, the Victors, the Orianas, you know, you generally don't see him struggle as much. And against, once Syndra's gone, Ryze actually has a fairly safe laning phase. And, you know, you'll be pretty happy once Syndra's banned to have Ryze picked up into most blind matchups.
Yeah, and this is just a textbook siege now coming out from Fnatic Academy. All they have to do is set up that line of Caitlyn traps, make sure that they can, you know, allow the super minions to push in the mid lane, occasionally walk over and help them out, and in the meantime, you just keep Mr. Raleigh chipping away at these objectives down on the bottom side of the map. Now that the rest of the team can push on in, they take a second inhibitor, and it's all starting to look pretty dire now for the side of LDLC.
Yeah, 26 minutes into the game, 2 inhibitors down, and now Fnatic have their eyes set firmly in that top lane. Just 1 tier 2 available to defend. Is probably going to receive no defense here from LDLC. They've got too many issues to worry about on the other side of the map. There's no global objective for them to have to stray away by being in another lane.
Yeah.
Again, this is going to be a desperation boy, I would say, when it comes to this final inhibitor turret, because it's basically, you know, stand up and fight now, or you've lost the game anyway.
Yeah, this definitely feels like a now or never moment for LDLC. Can they work some kind of miracle and take on this Fnatic Academy lineup? It certainly doesn't feel like it, but if you're a French viewer at home, you've got to start believing right now, because LDLC, they are needing the support. Crownie trying to clear away these super minions, but Kikis is here to try and catch out Nero, who on that Olaf, fairly safe. You know, he's got that Ragnarok available. Aki taking a huge chunk of damage there from Mr. Rala's ace in the hole. This could be one of the final pushes in the game now over towards this top side, but that mid lane inhibitor will spawn fairly shortly. Curtain Call comes out, but Broxer happy to sack that one up.
Absolutely, and just look at Kikis in the base right now. I mean, he is by himself pushing these 2 lanes in, ready and willing to just come and dive this inhibitor turret if, you know, it hits the fan, and he absolutely needs to. But he's not too fussed either way in terms of having to come and join this siege. And you can see here the inhibitor minions doing all of the work for Fnatic right now, and they're setting up another siege. It's desperation wave clear right now for LDLC.
Yeah, and now Kikis walks up. It forces everyone from LDLC back, and they get a good chunk of damage down onto the tower. Freyt now locked up slightly. Will take half of his HP in damage. Will back away with his life. Mid lane inhibitor, as I mentioned earlier, it's about to come back up. Fnatic are actually in a situation now where if they don't kind of put their foot down in the next couple of minutes, they might lose a lot of the pressure that they've managed to achieve.
Yeah, but then there are open inhibitors right now, and it just feels like their team fighting is far more, I guess, polished than what you're seeing coming out from LDLC. They have to force this fight right now. Brox is the target, Munchables.
It's just going to be a little bit of a disengage though, and in the end, a couple of ultimates used. Nero having to use his Ragnarok. The tower went down though. Fnatic not really able to get on top of their enemies, but it just doesn't matter if you can take these inhibitors instead. That is going to be the top lane inhibitor going down. The middle one spawned, but Fnatic are on top of the situation. This is going to be the trifecta of inhibitors going down. Ica's locked up. Broxer looking for a way into the fight, but decides that that's a bad idea right now. And look at that Realm Walk to safety. The whole gang's here, and they bounce out on the Mystery Machine.
That's the first time I've seen a Ryze ultimate compared to the Mystery Machine.
I don't know. I don't know.
Anyway, it was a nice exit. 3 inhibitors down. That bot lane inhibitor won't be coming up for a couple of minutes, I believe. It's a fairly short time, but, you know, Fnatic will feel comfortable walking in, forcing the fight, and trying to siege onto that when the due course is needed. But big objective coming up in the next minute, and I think Fnatic will feel pretty confident to go and just claim vision around the Baron area and take Baron straight off the map as soon as it spawns. You can see they're already setting up for it. No vision right there apart from a pink ward, which I believe is, or rather control ward, that has been there for a large period of time anyway. Fnatic going to go in and just try and take this straight away.
So Fnatic now taking control of the LDLC jungle. I mean, they've been in control of LDLC's entire half of the map for quite some time. Nero now going to get locked up. There's Ragnarok used defensively once again. Redemption not actually going to heal up the Olaf there. But look at that aggressive positioning from Fnatic Academy. It forces LDLC away from the Baron.
They don't need to do anything. They can just wait for minions to do the work for them, and I don't even know if LDLC can contest. There might be some sort of blind steal, a deadly flourish. Not quite on time. Another secured Baron for Fnatic. And
I want to see him just realm walk in right now, straight onto the final towers. But I think they're just going to take this one slow, use the minion waves that are going to be pushing in, double supers in every lane. And to be honest, LDLC, they need a miracle right now. We've got to see some kind of ridiculous ultimate from Ica or something along those lines to even have a chance in this fight. Freyt just going to knock Cly and Kikis away from the fight. Curtain Call comes through as well, but we've seen this 100 times this game. It just cannot do the damage with such a huge front line. Now they begin on these towers. Surely we've got to see LDLC start a fight here, because they are about to just slowly but surely lose their Nexus.
I don't even know if they start a fight. It's going to be good. We're going to see a fight anyway, Munchables.
Ica goes down. He got the flash bug where his ultimate went the wrong direction. That's going to be a double kill for Caitlyn as well. It's going to be Mr. Rales on the scene. There's another one for Broxer. And that is going to be the game. Fnatic Academy take their second win in style against LDLC.
And very similar fashion to the way we saw them complete their win yesterday. It was a calculated game plan, and that's kind of what we've seen from Fnatic. It's very sort of measured. They know exactly what they want to take at what time. You know, you feel like, again, I felt like I was almost watching a replay of their game yesterday, where they just went in bot lane tier 1, mid lane tier 1, top lane tier 1, systematically delete, you know, mid lane tier 2, bot lane tier 2. You know, they just wiped off slowly off the map, and it just didn't feel like LDLC could respond, Sona.
That game gives me a lot more confidence actually in Fnatic Academy just as a lineup, because they didn't get those early advantages we saw them get yesterday. It was all about just playing the macro game, saying, look, we're even on kills, we don't really care, we'll be 5,000 gold up by 15 minutes in the game anyway. It was a lot cleaner, it was a lot more the sort of style of play we see in the Challenger Series and in the LCS, and if they played that against any of the current Challenger Series teams, anyone would have a game on their hands.
Yeah, and this is, I think that's the key point, was that it wasn't a snowball, it was just correct macro play, and that's what netted them the victory. Let's take a quick look now at our schedule for today. The next game coming up is going to be Alien Tech up against Alternate Attacks. That's going to be the next one on the schedule for today. And you can see the rest of the games at the bottom of your screen, so make sure to tune in for them. We've got some big matchups coming up later today, but I will just say as well, a big thank you to our sponsors, AOC and Alienware, who are making all of this happen. If you want to go and grab yourself some kit, make sure to find AOC, and you can also head to esl.pm/Alienware if you want to grab yourself a brand new PC. Now, we're going to have a quick few minutes for ourselves, but when we come back, AT versus ATN will be kicking off.